Hey, welcome in everyone. This is Dan French. You guys know the channel, so let's get right into this. We have a good one to unpack today and talk about. I have a couple of articles that I want to talk about that I was doing some research on, and I thought they would be very interesting, especially since this presidential race supposedly is tightening up, and a lot of things out there about presidents, the presidential situation with Biden stepping down, Kamala Harris stepping in, and where all this is leading to. And there's a lot of information out there. A lot of people have been talking about just different things with President Trump, previous President Trump, Kamala Harris, and their thoughts. And you know how it is, man. It's just a circus. You know, this whole thing is a circus. But I still want to talk about the circus, which is both political parties and how they go at each other, and also the presidential polls. So the two topics I want to bring up today, which is the presidential polls, I feel are meaningless, and I want to talk to you about that today. Are they really meaningless, right? A lot of people don't, or look at these things, don't really pay attention to them, or some do, a lot of them do, and I think it's inaccurate, okay? Sample size, 1,000 to 1,500 respondents in common. You know, they're going out and getting a very small amount of people, asking them what their position is, who they're voting for. And this is not a political channel, but I want to bring up, man, I wish we had more political people out there, or more opportunity for other presidential candidates to choose from. Because when it always comes down to just two different political parties, because all the money's driven from those two political parties, it's an unfair advantage, and I don't feel that we're getting the best person for the job. And I'm going to keep emphasizing on that. I'm really looking around and saying, wow, who's really out there? Now, a lot of people side with Trump. Some people are siding with Kamala Harris. I mean, what has she really done? What has she done? Now, what's interesting about these polls is the murky waters of presidential polls, right? Tantalizing tidbits of data that promise to or predict the future of the presidency, but often it leads to more confusion and controversy. You know, these polls that come out are really barometers of public sentiment, and they're just sophisticated guesswork, right? Cloaked as in statistical jargon. Let's explore why presidential polls might or will be, in my opinion, meaningless, and why it doesn't always predict the outcome of who the president's going to be. Now, before we get into that topic, I do want to bring up the comments that were made by previous President Trump on Kamala Harris when he was asked about, do you know her? And he responded, yeah, I know her, but she's always been of Indian descent. And when I heard that crowd go, I was like, okay, this is going to hit big. And it did. Everybody's been talking about it. And so I want to refresh your memory if people haven't seen it. I'm sure you have. And we're going to just basically come in and I'm going to give you my opinion on what's happening there and why this doesn't mean anything. And is he right? You know, we'll talk about that. So let's listen to what he had to say here on this, and I'll come back and talk about it.
A long time indirectly, not directly very much. And she was always of Indian heritage, and she was only promoting Indian heritage. I didn't know she was black until a number of years ago when she happened to turn black, and now she wants to be known as black. So I don't know, is she Indian or is she black?
She is always identified as a black woman. She went to a historically black college.
I respect either one, but she obviously doesn't.
All right, guys. So there's a lot to unpack on this. Now, President Trump, man, the previous president, he's great on just putting it right out there. You know, he doesn't hold back on anything. He tells it how it is, and he's been telling it how it is. Now, is he wrong? He's not wrong, people. When you go, and I'm going to show you something here about how some of these posts out here have said this. Donald Trump falsely suggests Kamala Harris misled voters about her race. This is on August 1st, 2024. And posts mislead about Kamala Harris portrayed her heritage. You know? Now, this post here says Kamala Harris, August 13th, 2020. Kamala Harris was sworn into Congress as an Indian American and now plays the I'm a black card, right? So when was she sworn in? Okay, so this was back right around when COVID started, really. Maybe after COVID. It's actually after COVID a little bit. But California's Kamala Harris becomes first Indian American U.S. senator. This is by Business Insider, right? This is in November 8th of 2016. Attorney General Kamala Harris wins the open Senate to replace Democratic Senator Barbara Boxer in race that featured 2 Democrats in California. And it goes on to say that she took her victory and that she is the first Indian American senator that has been put into office. Okay, so beyond that, Sacramento Bee. This is January 3rd. Watch Kamala Harris sworn in as first Indian American senator. So is Trump wrong on that? He's not wrong. I mean, when you have somebody come in and that's how they want the narrative to be, then that's how the narrative is going to be, right? So you got to think that that's something that he's not wrong about. Does it make any difference? No. You know, when you look at this stuff and people get such a, you know, oh my gosh, anybody is going to use any leverage that they can, right? So they want, I think a lot of the campaigns and a lot of things out there want to target a specific race or audience. And I think that's part of the political ring that people are in. And that's why she's trying to use every opportunity that she can. Does that mean that she was never a, partly, or black heritage? No, that doesn't mean that. It just means that he's saying that he's always known her for this and now she's this, which is, hey, you know what? You can use both sides. Should that be a difference, though, or something that's a positive to becoming a president? No. What has she done? What has she done? Like, Trump, right? I mean, at least he's been, I always say we need more people because, again, this is not a political channel, but why do we have just these two? Why? Because that's where the money's being pushed. That's what people feel that they're going to, again, agendas, corporations, big money out there. They want 2 political parties only because they can keep pushing their narrative. People need to wake up on this stuff. But this whole circus, and I call it a circus, this soap opera, this drama about focusing on race and focusing on these things is stuff that I probably will not determine why a president is good or bad. It's all political jargon. It's all garbage. What have you done? I mean, look, she was given an opportunity. Anybody would take it. But at the same time, you have to question, what have you done to earn it? What have you done? And I feel that the media is really pushing her narrative because they just don't want Trump in office. I'm not a Trumper. I'm not somebody that wants to, I don't go for either side. I really don't. But when you look at this stuff, come on, guys, don't fall in the trap, falling in the trap of, oh, this or that. There's a lot of people out there that are doing that. I think this is, it's garbage. Nobody should care about what person is from what race or this race or that race. Who's the best person for the job? That's how everybody's getting hired. Where I go to work, or if you're going to get hired at a job, they look at your resume. Who's the best out there for the job? I don't see anybody. I see a bunch of circus acts. I see a bunch of people out there just like this making a big deal about something that makes no difference to anything. What are you doing to provide solutions to issues out there? Now, Trump's come out and provided some solutions, so I give him credit on that, or tried to at least attempt to. What is Kamala Harris doing? She's just on a parade tour of doing nothing. Like, doesn't come out and say, this is how we're going to solve this or that. She's more worried about getting her running mate and putting herself out there and being the popularity queen out there at the prom dance. That's kind of what I see is happening. Now, let's get into these presidential polls. And I want to bring this up because it's very interesting on how these polls work. and what's really involved on these polls. Now, going back to this, I want to show you something here. If you look at this, she's only been, what is this, maybe a week and a half, 2 weeks that she was introduced, and she's already passed President Trump. Okay, every news outlet for the most part is Harris jumps into small national lead. Harris polls, she's winning. It's like, come on, guys. Really? Don't believe in this garbage. Now, I'm going to bring over this guy. This guy was doing an interview. I'm going to come back and give you my opinion on what these polls do and how they operate. And I'm going to tell you what I think the outcome will be, and then we'll wrap this thing up. This is an interview that came out on a news outlet. So
most polls start this by asking people, straightforward, okay, how likely are you to vote in the election? This can rule out some people who aren't likely, and the people who say they're very likely, very often, actually do show up. The ones in the middle here can be a little more marginal. So one of the things we can do is look at what people have done in the past. This becomes an important part of ours and other likely voter models. If you look on a public voter file and you see, for example, that people have voted in, let's say, the last two elections, 2018, 2020, and 90% of them then voted in the subsequent, say, midterm after that, you can give that person in the poll a weight, a likely voter weight of 0.9. That reflects their generalizable chance of showing up based on past behavior. But that might be different from someone who voted only in 50% of recent elections. They might get a likely voter weight of 0.5. So you need to take into account that, but also, of course, new voters and what they might do. All of that, I hope, gives you the idea that this is a difficult thing to do in polling. There's a little bit of art and a little bit of science. Anytime you encounter a model, you're building a model of an electorate or behavior. This is especially important politically because it's an era in which so few people cross party lines, right? You get more than 9 in 10 Republicans vote for Republicans, Democrats voting for Democrats. And so persuasion, while important, can often not be as important as turnout. Yes, the old cliche, it all comes down to turnout, but that's built into these polls. And so when you see things like last time in the midterms, when polling showed that if Democrats turned out more, they'd keep the House close, which in fact they did. That beat a lot of expectations, that beat a lot of punditry. That was where good polling data comes in handy. And you see the effects that that can have both in a poll and in real life when it all comes down to turnout. So that's a bit about how likely voter modeling works. And again, it's going to be important because the differences, when people start parsing 1 or 2 points, sometimes more, in the polling you're about to see, is often because of differences in the way that pollsters model the electorate. And you should ask your pollster, how did you come up with this? How did you do this? And the good pollster should be able to explain it. That's one of the things everybody watching should demand as we go into this election season. Scott?
So you saw what he had to say about it, right? And it's like, it's confusing, right? It's more confusing by listening to him than it is like understanding what the hell the polls are. These polls are often presented as a scientific and precise reality of what's going to happen, but they're messy, man. They're just, it's not accurate. I think these polls just don't, everybody's different. The reality too is I think a lot of people don't really pay attention to it, but the ones that do, the media is pushing it out there. And I tell you, man, it really influences a lot of Americans on who's winning. And it's something to talk about. I don't know. To me, I think there should be a third person or fourth person running for president. And I hope that someday we have that. It may not happen in my lifetime, but I'll tell you right now, these numbers are skewed. I'll tell you too that, you know, when you talk about polls and how each one is judged and how they're brought to attention of like what somebody's actually doing or voting for, every one of them's different. And so they just don't present an accuracy of who's going to become president. And we got to figure this out. Like, this is just something that I'm tired of hearing about polls and how they're misleading. They're just not accurate. It's all data driven. And to me, I just feel that we should stop doing this. because it's not something that people should rely on who's going to win. And, you know, if people out there say, well, go make a change, go vote. What if your situation is that you voted and you haven't seen change, right? You haven't seen changes that's out there for your position. Like, meaning, okay, you've been voting for 20 years and every single time you voted, nothing gets done based off of what that presidential candidate says. We all know they're just saying what you want us to hear or what they're trying to tell us to hear. Do they really back it up? A lot of people think Trump has been backing it up. But to me, I think these presidential polls are a joke. I think nobody should pay attention to them. And I think having somebody like Kamala Harris jump into office, or not even office, but jump into a opportunity when she's a vice president, nobody hears from her really, and now she's leading the presidential candidacy. Come on, man. That just tells you how far off we are and how inaccurate these polls are, and how you should not be watching them at all or paying attention to them and using that as a barometer that that's going to be our next president. This is Dan. I'm done here. If you guys have any questions, comments, let me know. And I'd love to answer any questions or any things that you have to bring up about these topics that I talked today. We'll see you guys at the next one, because I am out of here.